time for Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinsel hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Hello and welcome to Shiny Side Out with
Dave
and Mecky on WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio. That's right. Where it's more than just radio. So jump in the chat room if you can. And this is show number 310. 10 and 300. Of course it is. 311. It is in fact 311. 11 and 300. And we're going to talk about Nazis and the occult, which will then morph into Nazis and what they learned from the occult and hidden tech over the next 6 or 7 shows, because the show notes are 60 pages. That's right, 60 pages. It's on air, it's online and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a great tabletop digital radio. If you missed Solaris' show with Blake Percival, it was great. You shouldn't have missed it, but you did, and it was Whistleblower, and I actually caught the end of it, and it was fascinating, and Solaris, awesome. Yet again, a great guest. Again, I only caught the end of it, but they're talking about underground installations and such, and that actually fits in really well with some of the research we have done for this show cycle, but you'll find out about that as we go through it. Now, if you did miss it, it only costs $5 a month to access the Freedom Slips archives, and you can check out her shows, any show, all the shows. In fact, $5 a month, $5. That's a happy meal, I think, these days, maybe, right? That's what it is. Now, before we start, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. For me, that's the Daruk people, and for Dave,
the Darkanyung.
Thank you. And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. And just a word of warning, we may be referring to persons now deceased in our show, because that's a culturally sensitive topic as well. Dave, how are you?
Oh, I'm so ill.
Are you really?
Yeah, full fever, runny nose, eyes.
Oh, really?
Blurry. Yeah.
Jeez. Oh, my God.
And it's middle of winter, too. I've got a friend in Vegas who's
it's
suffering
not winter. It's summer.
No, it's a summer flu.
Ah.
And I've got a friend of the show's in Vegas, and he's also suffering exactly the same symptoms, Mecky.
Really? Oh, you guys been doing something online you shouldn't have been doing?
yeah, that's right. That's what we were doing. Now, what's really funny about that, I have to say, is I came up with the idea that the Earth could just be flying through a part of dirty space that contains this flu, and that it just falls down. It rains down. Why not?
It's possible. I think that is probably not what's happening, but it's possible.
No, I agree.
The reason I'm saying that is because we obviously have, not everybody is sick, but the thing is, you're right. It's possible. I mean, people are getting sicker a lot more. People are getting allergies a lot more than I remember in my childhood. There are all kinds of ailments. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, we played in the dirt, scraped our knees. We got sick, sure. But the thing is, so is it part of, is it partially the vaccinations? Is it just the way we live? Because we certainly are living a lot less natural than we used to, right? Is it the food we eat? Is it all the artificial additives, the hormones? I mean, I think it's a little bit of
antibiotics in all the food.
Yeah.
We eat.
Oh, and not only that, but that's the thing. The antibiotics. Let me tell you something about that, since you brought it up.
Oh, thanks.
It's a really worrying thing. It seems that 40% of people in hospitals, this is across the board, by the way, not just in third world countries, no longer respond to antibiotics. So obviously, if you've got an infection or you had a procedure, you're at risk of an infection, and that's not good. I mean, 40%, that's a lot of people. But we
had golden staph once.
That's not good. What?
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
Jeez.
It peeled all the skin off my foot.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
It's crazy. Oh no, it is absolutely awful, and only because I'd gone in to have some surgery on my foot, And, you know, what did he drop the scalpel? You know?
See, all I'm saying is,
it's crazy.
DIY at home, man. DIY
I'm
at
going
home.
to do it. That's what I'm doing in the future.
Right. Because I avoid the hospital as like the plague. If I can avoid, like the plague.
I see what you did there.
Right. Except the plague, of course, is not avoiding the hospital, right? It's right there. It's sitting there, doing its thing, you know, very comfortably. Now, go on.
No, yeah. Look, just the summer flu thing is usually awful, and we're in the last days of summer, and I thought I'd gotten through at least one season without the flu, and yeah, not to be the case. I don't have very much contact with anybody, very little contact. So, you know, my kids had fevers, and they went in a day, like last week, and then a couple of days later, maybe I've got two things at once. I don't know. But anyway, just keep your hands clean. Wash your hands if you touch public spaces, you know, like shopping carts and things like that.
It's just on that. Do you know that the first line of, and I listen to a lot of doctors commenting this, the first line of defense in the fight of the antibiotic resistant viruses and such is in fact washing your hands.
That's
water, water and soap, water and soap. So now look, good advice anytime. But that's the first line of defense, and it seems the last line of defense these days. So that worries me a little. But good personal hygiene, always a plus. I see signs in bathrooms these days at work, for example. Oh, you should wash your hands. Good advice. Shouldn't really have to say it though, right?
Yeah, I should have been taught that a long time ago. hey, Mackie, I noticed the same thing that I was given for that flu outbreak last year in our winter, where I contracted that awful flu that was killing people. Now it's killed, I forget how many people in the US. Don't quote me. I won't hazard it a guess. But they're now issuing Tamiflu in the US as the last bastion. This is what the government had, and they stockpiled it, ready for use, and now they're already using it. I mean, that's it. The next thing that hits us is going to be the pandemic. It's going to be the pandemic. It's going to be like the Spanish flu. It's going to kill millions because they're using it up. They've used it on this one. And I was listening to an expert talking about the flu vaccination that they gave Australia last year. This was on APAC, Mackie, and they said that by the time they'd taken the flu and broken it, so they're delivering an inert. You're probably disagreeing with me, audience, and I don't want to get you offside, except that, you know, I've been having flu shots for a long time, and I really haven't had that flu. But they said that this one morphed so quickly that the one that they had in the flu shot was not at all similar anymore to the one that hit us. And it's like spinning someone around in a circle after they've aimed their gun and then expecting them to hit the target. He said it just blindsided us. We didn't see that much change occurring and the body had no idea. It's sort of like, in software terms, it was, you know, the 12th variant and the antivirus couldn't find it. It just slipped straight past. And I think that's a really hard place to be in. You know, in Australia, we do respect the scientific community has a higher respect than maybe in other countries. And it was just a really hard thing to hear the guy actually, I mean, he was totally disappointed in the effectiveness of it. And he's, you know, as a result, been slammed because, I had the flu vaccine and got the flu. Maybe it was in the flu vaccine. No. He said, no, it's not. And we don't have the same chemical makeup to our vaccines than maybe somewhere else. I don't know. Anyway, just have to put that one out there, Mackie.
Look, and it's an interesting situation though overall, right? I'm just looking at something here that came up on my feed, and this is around the melting permafrost. You might have seen it. So just in vein of what you've just saying,
what's it unleashing on us?
Well, that's the question. Now the theory is here, I guess, more than a theory. There are a lot of viruses, microbes, bacteria, and such that have been frozen in the permafrost for thousands of years, because that's how long it's been there, and they are pretty much non-existent anywhere else on the face of the Earth anymore. Having said that, now that they're coming up again, it could pose an issue because the permafrost is melting. What's more worrying is that there are massive mass graves, massive, from the Spanish flu 1918, 1919, that are also, in fact, they were dug in the permafrost. People were buried there, and then there was,
wow.
yeah. So now these are all thawing, meaning, of course, that Spanish flu could in fact be released again. NASA found a 32,000-year-old microbe in the ice, which wasn't dead. Okay, and scientists recently revived an 8-million-year-old virus.
Yeah, just in the lab, of course. Yeah, nothing.
No, but that's the thing, though, right? I mean, this has been in the ice for 8 million years. Now,
yeah, so that's what I'm saying, Mackie. So if you could have a virus, like panspermia, it's frozen and enters the atmosphere and it stops being dormant anymore.
That's right. And look, it's an issue. It's a big issue. It's a big problem. Hopefully, though, we'll get around to solving it. I mean, we might get back to the old serum. I don't know if you guys remember that the serum before we had effective antibiotics. We had these serums that we gave people. We had quinine as well, which is the active substance in tonic water, which fights the malaria infection. And there are other.
Some lead. Oh, mercury.
Well, copper does a good trick. Silver as well. But see, the thing is, copper has always been effective because it oxidizes so quickly and all the time. So copper is always oxidizing, so nothing can live on the surface of copper. That's when the ancient Greeks found that if you put copper into a wound, it doesn't get infected. I didn't really understand the mechanics of it. But it was good enough because it was, this is practical medicine. It works. Let's do it again. There you go. We don't have to get it peer reviewed. No, it just worked. Let's just do it. That's a good idea. Yeah. But yeah. So that's where we are, and it is a worry. Because if we were all dispersed, living in small communities, I wouldn't really care. We don't live like that and haven't for a while. We're living in mega cities. And I mean mega cities, millions and millions of people on top of each other. Something happens in a city like that, it's good night, Kansas. I don't know what that means. I just said it. But it's
I like it.
Right?
You should own that.
I'm owning it. Good night, Kansas. But the point is, it's a real big problem, and nobody is doing anything about it. What else I saw, Dave? I saw another report. This will blow your mind. Now, the pharmacy industry is making billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, right? Yeah. Right, they are, right? It's true. It's a fact. We all know that, right? But then I saw this documentary, and I thought, because I thought, okay, it's a lot of research they're doing, so every failed medicine, they probably have to, they have to wear the cost, and for every successful one, there's probably 1,000 failures. Whatever. That was my thinking. It turns out that the vast majority, and we're talking in the vicinity of 90%, 90% of all research and development is done by the public sector. That's right. Universities, yours truly, the government, and government-led health institutions and such. Not the private pharmaceutical sector at all. Well, you know what they do? They buy people.
They buy the patents, yep.
Right? There's this recent thing that came out in Australia, in fact, which I think it's this virus that kills cancer cells. It's a recent development here in Australia. Not all cancer cells, but quite a few, right? And it's a virus. It's essentially a virus that was engineered, and it kills cancer cells, which is interesting because if you remember the movie World War Z or the book, that's how it started. It's like this virus that was released to kill cancer, right? But this is happening, and Merck, I think it was Merck, I want to say Merck, but I could be wrong, off and paid $500 million for that. All right, $500 million. Whoosh, gone. You know, they bought it. So they don't do their own research. Yeah, they don't. They make billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of profit, but they don't do any research. Very little research. In fact, most of the money goes to pay these bonuses to the top execs. Yeah, that's really where the money goes. So don't feel too bad for big pharma when they jump up and down and scream, "Oh, cheap medicine out of India! It's going to ruin us." No, it's not. Not today. But look, that's where we are. This is the cynicism of the world we live in. And you know what? If you suffer from a disease or condition, let's call it, that is only affecting, I don't know, a few thousand people, you will never, ever find medicine for it. You know why? It's not worth it. It's an
economically viable.
Completely. I mean, what? So they could. So the point is, they could help you. That's my point, right? So let's say there's maybe something congenital, something in your genome or something that could be a cure or something like that, or treatment. If there's only a few thousand of you, well, that's your problem. Hey, I'm not going to waste my time on you. Well, how much can you pay me? Now, unless like a billionaire gets sick with that, we're not going to see any development in that space.
And then you still couldn't afford it anyway, I promise.
Right?
Only 2 people were there to reap the benefit of the cure. Yeah.
I tell you.
Becky, I was watching this week. I was watching tons and tons of AI videos and all the futurists talking about it. But just before I do that, I want to say, just adding to this point, imagine that we land on Mars.
Yes.
And you're talking about the thawing of the permafrost. Well, we're about to, as a race, as a species, expand to Mars. Now, whether or not we're from Mars initially, you could argue that, because I think maybe we might have been. Who knows? But we haven't encountered anything that was alive there. Ben,
well,
think about, do you think it's going to be inert? Oh, it's just got stuff. We'll be right. No.
Well. Think of Mars as permafrost. Really, you should. All of Mars, right?
It is.
And you're right.
What's frozen in that?
Look, I mean, there was this. Remember the Martian rock where they thought they had found like a microbe, or the remnants of like a fossilized microbe. Now, I don't think anybody would argue anymore these days with all the scientific evidence around Mars and what we found, the presence of water. Nobody would argue that life couldn't have existed on Mars at some point. Okay, I'm talking about strictly official line here, right? Established, peer-reviewed, hard scientific facts.
We're not talking jump rooms and there's already been nothing.
No, not at all. We're just talking about what everybody out there believes. And I had a very interesting conversation I'll share with you in a second. But the point is that nobody would argue that. So if you said, "Oh, look, what do you expect to find on Mars?" to a scientist that is maybe involved in some kind of exploratory Mars mission, maybe someone working for what's his name, the Tesla guy, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, yeah.
Yeah. Then the scientist probably say, "Oh, look, we do expect to find some microbes, some bacteria, maybe viruses, maybe something." That is neither, prokaryotes, or eukaryotes. I mean, these are the two main life forms on this planet. But there could be something else completely different, right? Or who knows? But nobody would look at you like you're insane anymore, all right? So it's baby steps toward the truth, I guess, at some point. Just on that, I had a discussion around this with some people around dinner, a couple of weeks ago, I think. And, people realized that I had a radio show here with Dave, and, we're talking about conspiracy. Oh, tell us more, blah, blah. Well, what about the moon landing? And actually, the first question was, who killed JFK? I said, well, I could tell you, but then I have to kill you. So that kind of happened. But that didn't go down well. But then the moon landings, of course. I said, okay, take a step back. And I need everybody to take a step back here. The moon landings. Do I believe that we have never been to the moon? No, I don't. I believe we have been to the moon. If you ask me, do I believe we went to the moon in 1969 in this particular moon mission Apollo, right? Then I will say to you, probably not.
Yeah, agree.
And I will say to you, probably not. This is why I will say it. When the Russians sent Yuri Gagarin into space, I think it was 57 or 58, maybe earlier than that, America was stunned. Stunned. What? I mean, you have to understand, this was the pre-satellite era of the world. There's nothing in space. that we put there. our current civilization, I'm talking, right? At least that we know. And America was stunned. And Kennedy said, you know what? We'll have a man, when he came to power, we'll have a man on the moon, and he said man, I think, by the end of the decade. That's what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was the beginning of the 60s, right? And then the 60s came, and then it credit where credit is due. The Americans started the Apollo program with a vengeance. They went bang, right? Full tilt. No expense spared. One disaster.
1961 it was, Mickey.
Yes, correct. Yes. One disaster after another. One process. Oh, it was horrible. Deaths everywhere. I mean, the whole Apollo program was just all over the shop. It was a complete failure. All of it. Comes around 1969, the last year of the decade. And this was in fact the last mission that was planned for the 60s, Apollo 11. What do?
Have to do it.
We got to get to the moon. Now, what I would have done, because you have to understand, height of the Cold War, international pressure, in the world, in the face of the world, everybody's trying to in America, that is, everybody's trying to portray strength. We're the leader of the free world, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So what do? I mean, immense pressure, astounding pressure, right? The Cuban Missile Crisis had just passed as well. So and the Bay of Pigs, so everything was just, Europe, look, the whole thing was a mess. But two power blocks, Soviet Union on one side and the United States of America on the other, USA and USSR.
We can't lose, Mickey. We can't.
America, no. I mean, Kennedy said it. He was dead at the time, but Kennedy said we're going to be on the moon. Dead. Well, he was. We're going to be on the moon in 69.
At the end of the decade. That's right.
End of the decade. So we're going to make it. Even if I had complete confidence in my ability to, put Apollo 11 as the mission control or whatever onto the moon, I would have come up with a plan B. Plan B would have been, I'm going to stage this thing if I have to, because I cannot afford to admit that I could not do it. Isn't it odd that it was 1969, and we're talking July here, July 1969. There's no window after that. There's no window.
There's no second launch. That's right.
No, not that year. 70s, sure enough. But this was it. So, even if I had full confidence, which nobody did at the time, by the way, I would have put something in the oven. I would have baked another. I would have come up with Plan B and C. And they did in fact talk to what's his name? Space Odyssey. Kubrick. They did speak to him. And if you look at the Kubrick's movie,
the Confession.
The Confession, in fact, yeah. Like if you look at all the space suits and the way it looks, he did an excellent job simulating a space in the movie. So and don't forget, this predated the moon landing. It's a really, really great movie from a just a special effects point of view. So I would have gone to him and say, hey, can you help us out? And you know what? He did. Mm-hmm. And there it was. It's all there. And you look at the pictures and you look at the photographs that were taken, especially on that mission. Do I think that we've made it since? Yeah, probably. But I also believe that when we did make it there, we found something which has made us not go back.
Yeah.
So 1969, I don't think we made it. My opinion, only here, right? We have gone subsequently, absolutely. But we found something because we haven't been back in 40 years. Actually, it's, 40, 50, almost 50.
And now there's a plan to go back again.
Well, with the Chinese, right?
Yeah. And India. India went too.
Well, yeah, India. Good luck with that. No offense to anyone, but I just didn't see it. Like not landing anyway, right? Yeah. But I have more faith in Elon Musk landing on the moon. No, but you see, this is the thing, though, right? It has taken us these decades to go back. There's no good reason not to have gone back, because the Cold War kept going, and we didn't stop going to the moon because the Cold War stopped. Oh, we don't have to do this anymore. The Cold War didn't effectively stop until 1989. 1989, all right, which was 20 years after the alleged first moon landing. Mm-hmm. We didn't build any officially we didn't build any stations on the moon, any bases, nothing. We didn't mine the asteroids, none of that. We haven't sent a manned mission that we're all aware of to Mars either. We've sent a whole bunch of other missions to Mars, and a vast majority of those missions met with disaster, lost, crashed, gone. only a few made it through. I think Viking, Voyager, and maybe another one recently. But the point is, there's very few that actually made it through to Mars. So you can make of that what you want. But my point here is this, okay? People will do a lot to protect their reputation, and especially the nation's reputation. And people say, oh, you can't keep something like that a secret. Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Mackie, I don't think the people at the control center in Houston
They probably didn't
had any idea where the signal was truly coming from, since Parkes in Australia was being used as the download point for that small bunch of hours that they were on the moon. Well,
exactly.
Supposed to be. Yeah. And so, bouncing around delays, you can build delay in.
Look, nobody, people, but see, the thing is this, so people told me, oh, but I watched it on TV. Oh, well, it must be true. Yeah, not fair enough. Yeah, I stand corrected. You saw it on TV.
You watched something on TV? Because
I saw it on
the real.
Yeah, I know. I saw it on the internet.
Yeah, because that's real too. Mackie, you're absolutely right. And, I was having a conversation today with a fellow, and we mentioned these things, and it's very difficult. I've got a segue coming up, right? But it's very difficult to cease your belief with your patriotism to your government, to stop trusting your government. Once you hear the government has pushed you aside for its own benefit, how difficult is it then to continue the trust? Because remember, trust is built, and that's the hard part. New information and throw it at me, I don't know, it's like I'm teetering on the brink of falling backwards over an abyss to some people. And the more patriotic, the tougher it is for them to ingest this information.
Of course.
And that can be very difficult. Now, this is where it gets a bit strange. I mean, can you believe it? Conspiracies, right? Well, Donald Trump Jr. seems to like the latest one in a tweet that he liked. And that was a story before it was pulled, by the way, and now it's been pulled. And the Twitter post that he liked said, and an aide to a Florida state politician was sacked after accusing that's David Hogg, and another teen of being stooges. Benjamin Kelly, secretary to Republican District Representative Sean Harrison, emailed a journalist, and I quote their quote, "Both kids in the picture are not students here, but actors that travel to various crises when they happen." And then that's the end of the quote. It says, asked about the claims on CNN, David was responding to that accusation. He says, "I am not a crisis actor." And that's the end of that tweet post. But what happened next was just outrageous. Now, YouTube and Google are playing whack-a-mole. You know that game where there's all the holes and the moles come up and you've got the hammer in your hand and you've got to whack them down? Well, that's what they're doing right now with the video claiming that David Hogg is a crisis actor. So it keeps reappearing and they keep turning it off. Now, hang on. So the government has forced the hand and pushed to have the video banned. Like the rhyme in that one. In one of his interviews, David Hogg announces that his father was an ex-FBI agent. Okay, so his dad was someone important, right, in the government. My question is, was the video removed because of his father's request, power, or connections? Quite possibly. That makes sense, right? I have to admit that. Now, I've watched a couple of other broadcasts where people are questioning this, right? But I didn't know about the video until it was already pulled, so I didn't get to see it personally. I didn't get to see it. And I've not seen a copy of it, and I've tried to see it, and I can't. I can't find it anywhere. I think they've pretty much nipped that in the bud. But it's a shame that the powers that choose to pull this video, right, the powers that be. Now, is it a lie? Is it slander? Does it defame him? Really? Does it disarm his argument about gun control? I think it does that. If you're sort of character assassinating him, saying he's only an actor. So, if it were only untrue, then YouTube should take down 40% or more, and Mickey might argue a higher quantity of this, of videos. Maybe about, you know, free power or perpetual motion devices. What about all of the flat earth videos? If it was just untrue, right? YouTube's gone. You just have people applying makeup and unboxing Disney gifts, right? That's the end of that. And our lovely archives, Mecky. But think to yourself for a minute, just how this translates to 1984. Media censorship and the government agenda for control of the population. We've already heard that the advertising agencies work in hand with the government to perpetuate a message, to condition us to a particular way of thinking. And now we know that Facebook and all social media do the same thing. They have algorithms that keep us in our state of happiness by supplying us information which is what we already agree upon as making us happy. So they keep feeding you. So look, if the video was true, and I'm not saying it is, but if it were, would it have disarmed the latest shooting? Absolutely it would have, if it were true. So I saw a lot of videos and interviews with school kids, and they were all smiles. There was no sadness, they weren't shaken up, and they weren't traumatized. And that's a bit weird to me, right? So, and it made me think that maybe something wasn't right. But that's where I stopped. I stopped at that point. And yeah, I saw all this information coming at me, and I haven't made a decision. I've done some own research, and I found that his picture does, in fact, appear in the yearbook of the school which he was supposed to have attended in Florida, and that the other stuff was made up. But that doesn't change the fact that he might actually be a crisis actor. I don't know. Yes, he was on the news in California on holidays, right? But that doesn't change it. It's still the event. The event is still there. The fact that the video itself had millions of views before it was taken down, millions, right, is testament to the power of social media, not the truth or lies that the video contained. So maybe it shows how many people are tired of the government's enforced narrative as well. Maybe it's a gauge in which we can say these people are attempting to find a truth, which is a good thing. But YouTube and Google shut it down. That's a concern. I mean, with so many conspiracy theories out there today, I think the government can either cut us off from each other by isolating us into our own little happy worlds, censor everything, and maybe become like China or North Korea, you know, let people think for themselves. What? Just by cutting it off? Oh, you can't have any of that. So, have they given this video more credence because they did this? Because now that it's been targeted, because that idea has been targeted by such a high level. But it isn't just YouTube and Google, it's the government telling them to pull it. So the government was pleased with itself. I have to say, how many lies does it take to make the truth, though? If you lie and lie and lie and lie and lie and lie, you can create a truth that isn't real. So you're backing up the lies with more lies, is what I mean. And Maggie has we're at the topic, today's topic has, you know, a basis on that ideal of perpetual lies could become the truth. So the government was pleased with itself when the jury found, and Maggie mentioned this earlier, that the JFK magic bullet, that absurd and unbelievable idea that a single bullet zigzags, pauses, then goes in for the kill from the opposite direction. They found that to be a plausible idea. What? How could they do that? And then they perpetuated it, shut it down, and said, well, that's the end of that. I mean, we the people were to eat it up. We were to consume it and believe it verbatim. Bullet and all. Then they kill the accused before the trial. I mean, really? Really? So, Mekki, in your conversation with your friends around the dinner table and JFK comes up, it's the best one. Now, if they hadn't have done that, if they hadn't have had that jury and that outcome, we would have had more trust. But this is one of those points in time where the trust is lost. And then you've got to earn it back. How does the government come back from that position? With war?
No, it doesn't. That's really the point here. It doesn't come. You can't come back from this. But the thing is this. This is going to sound very trite, but the truth is this. To tell a lie, it takes two people. One to tell the lie, and the other one to listen and believe it. Okay, and not only that, to want to believe it. Think about it this way. We come up and we say JFK was killed by, I don't know, the mafia, blah, blah, whoever, someone, right? Or the government, people that didn't like him, the Republicans, I don't care, someone, right? Oh, no, that's no good, because that means the world is not as safe as we thought it was. If I can blame some lone nut job, like a person that, is on the fringe of society. Mm-hmm. So don't forget, Lee Harvey Oswald was supposed to be homosexual as well, right? But he was on the fringe of society, was a bit of a nutter, like Martin Bryant and all those guys, right? Yeah, that's right. He's good nose there, my friend. But the point is, if you can blame those people that are on the fringe, that are in fact, the shooter in Florida was described as a broken human being. All of a sudden, the world makes sense again. Like, it's senseless to lose loved ones in any scenario.
Completely.
Okay. It like you're lost, and I've been in that position myself. You're completely lost. You can't, and you try. You grasp for anything to explain what happened. Anything. And now, because it doesn't make sense for a normal person, let's say, to go into a school and shoot students. It doesn't compute, right? It also doesn't make sense for your government or any government to pay somebody to do that, or brainwash someone to do it. That doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, you go, oh my God, if that's true, then my whole world is just completely destroyed, right? Because a lot of people don't have the benefit that Dave and I had, and maybe some of our listenership here, which is to be not fully immersed in society necessarily, but take an observer role, always be on the fringes a little bit. So, well, we are, right? It's true. We are a little on the fringes, and I've always felt that way. But it gives you a good vantage point. Whereas people that are really fully invested in this civilization, in the cultural narrative, it's a lot harder for those people to jump over their own shadow, to accept something.
I get you. Mm-hmm.
Right? To accept something as that could potentially destroy their worldview. And that's a big thing. I mean, okay, I'll give you a very simple example. Galileo Galilei. He said the Earth revolves around the sun. Earth around the sun. Not the other way around. Mm-hmm. But at the time, completely unacceptable. Because the worldview, people that people had grown up with, died with, lived with.
The religious view.
Yeah. But it was also the worldview, right? In those days, there was no difference. Was that no? In fact, the sun revolves around the Earth, because the Earth clearly is the center of the universe, because it is the pinnacle of God's creation. So how could it be any other way? Any other way? We're not even talking about flat and round now. Okay, forget that. Yeah. But it was, in fact, such a threatening thought. And we're just talking about thoughts here. He proposed an idea. Now, we know that it happened to be true, but at the time it was an idea because no satellites, no flight, hard to prove these things, right? Mathematically, you can if you... Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not going into it now. But the point is that he could not, point to it and absolutely prove it unless somebody understood the science he was trying to invent.
Galileo,
But
I'm going to ask you to renounce that statement. Renounce your ideas.
Bingo.
That's it.
Yes.
No more of that way of thinking. You're confined to your house. And there's not
In fact,
going to be any more discussion.
Yeah, we're going to burn you at the stake. And this is what happened to Bruno, a scientist who was burned at the stake. And others were burned at the stake for ideas. It hasn't changed. We haven't changed. We think we're a lot more sophisticated. We're not. No, we're not. We just cling to these new worldviews that we have, right? Oh, JFK was killed by crazy lone gunmen. Okay. Or Marilyn Monroe there was an accidental overdose. His brother and Martin Luther King, they again lone nutters. Now, there's a pattern here. There's a pattern of things.
If Galileo was alive today and putting out his idea today, his video would get taken down by YouTube and Google.
Well, it would be. And not only that, forget that. He'd be in a mental institution. That's where he'd be.
Yeah, but you can't rock the planet like that. You can't do it.
You can't. And you take that a little bit further, right? And you start thinking about other things. When you go, well, how well do we know these school shooters? I mean, let's talk about the school shooters because it's a pertinent thing at the moment. Now, do I think there may be some false flag operations? Potentially. I don't know for a fact, but I can't rule it out. Having said that, why? Why would you do that? If I were the elite, right, and I sent millions of people to die anyway, why wouldn't I just send a real shooter in? They did it in Port Arthur. There was a real shooter, right? Others as well, right? But
They'll hang the patsy anyway.
Well, they will hang the patsy, but you need a patsy because unless you have a patsy, people cannot incorporate it into their worldview. Again, I'm going back to my original point. If you can blame all the ills of the world, right, on these crazy loners, especially when it comes to gun violence and such, aces, you're in good shape. It's the same. It's the same with justification to invade other countries. Oh, he's an evildoer. Oh, they're this and that. Now, let's be very clear about one thing here. The Taliban, not because they're such good people, but what the Taliban did, they destroyed the poppy crops prior to the invasion for a variety of reasons. They also didn't play ball on the oil gas pipeline coming out of Central Asia. Okay, no. So to argue, oh no, this, that, and the other, and the drugs. No. Let's be clear. They had destroyed the poppy crops after the Taliban, were pretty much defeated, if you will. I mean, not that you can ever, conquer Afghanistan.
You can't conquer an idea.
No, poppy crops were right back up.
That's right.
Okay, so let's go on. Yeah.
No. I saw an interview on, I think it's C-SPAN or something, with an American CIA general. I think he might have been ex-general or something like that. And they were lamenting over the past and questioning. And the interview was really tough. And he said, you've got it in for Putin, really, haven't you? I mean, gee, you won't give him a break here or there. And he goes, well, he's doing this and doing that, and he took Crimea and he's doing this. And he said, well, that's meddling, isn't it? And he had him over a barrel, and he said, well, we like to influence, And he goes, but aren't you crucifying the Russians for meddling in your own elections? And he goes, well, I mean, it's just the times. I think the times we live in. He goes, well, not really. And let me name all the things that the US has meddled in. He went back to '63, Mackie, and he just named all of these conflicts and all of these things that the US had done. And I went, wow, you owned him. He got owned in that interview, and he had nowhere to go on it. And the guy was really nice about it too. He let the guy talk, and he ended up admitting it, and he had no defense against that statement. However, what I noticed was this discussion about, well, what's happening next? Where are we looking like we're going? And you know what? I'll talk to Meki offline during the break. And I know I don't want to really say it on air, but it seemed a bit frightening, Meki, just to be honest. Anyway, so back to you, Meki.
Oh, look, like I said, let's go back to changing someone's point of view and the entire. In fact, somebody just posted something in the chat called Justice for Germans to Weltanschauung. And Weltanschauung, of course, means worldview, but of course it's much bigger than that. Germans have great words. I will watch it. I haven't watched it yet, but the point is to change someone's worldview, their center. It's a very hard thing to do. Most of us like to live our lives and just go on, get on with it. So what we're doing here with this show and the other shows, well, we're challenging that view. And a lot of people don't like it, and a lot of people will actively resist it. In fact, they will never ever come across. You can, and it doesn't matter what kind of arguments you make. It doesn't matter what evidence you bring to the table. You cannot change someone's point of view if they really, 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 really don't want to. If they're not built to accept that they could be wrong, in fact, that their whole life could be built on a lie, it's just non-negotiable territory.
True.
I give you another example. So a lot of us are this or that, Catholic or Muslim or Jewish, and for the most part, we have no idea what that means. Oh no, I know exactly. No, you don't. You don't know what it means. You don't. I mean, some of you, listeners on this radio station excluded, I think, but a lot of people don't understand the articles of their own faith. In the same way, they don't understand how a computer works, or a mobile phone, or their television. It is just in their environment. It is something that is part of their life, their experience of life, and it's never questioned.
But they think they know, right?
They think they know. I'm Catholic. Okay. What does that mean? Oh, Christmas and Lent, and Well, but no, but I'm not making fun, because the truth is that I get it. It's hard. I mean, this is why people outsource their spiritual concerns in the same way that they've outsourced all the technology concerns. Not a lot of people are actually interested in technology. It's just too hard. Or quantum physics, or mathematics. It's too hard. And how does it affect my life anyway? Who cares? Well, it affects it greatly, but be that as it may. In the same way, I go to the church or not, but I certainly say, that I'm this, I'm that, and then, that has, for me as well, oh God, internally you're categorized. Beautiful. If you have to fill it in a form, you can just easily fill it in, right? I now say I'm a quantum Presbyterian, because I think that's funny. And I like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But the point is that you're defining yourself. You're putting yourself in a box without even understanding what that box is all about. You don't know. You really don't know. And in order to be part of any conversation, you have to educate yourself. You have to know things, at least about yourself. So if I meet you in the street and you say, "Oh, I'm a Protestant," or "I'm a Jew," or "I'm a Hindu," okay, great. So what does that mean? Right? Oh, these are the things I do. Oh, okay. So these are the things you do because your parents did them. I get it. But what does that mean? What do you actually believe? Right? I mean, what are the tenets of your belief? Oh, and then that's usually where the conversation stops, unless you have a really devout person with you. It doesn't matter what faith it is, by the way. And that goes with any, like communists. I'm a communist. Oh, really? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So what does that mean? Or anarchist, or anything. Like people like to use these words. Boom. Yeah, I'm this, I'm that. Look at me, I'm wonderful, right? I'm agnostic. Without fully understanding what they're saying, I'm always astounded by this. I mean, people use words like candy. They just throw it out. Here, you have some words. Use the words. I want to say some words. You like my words?
I want some candy.
I want candy too. And it's disheartening, because yes, language is a very imperfect medium, but we're going even further by not even fully understanding what we're actually saying. That's a real problem for me. That's a massive problem.
Now, Meki, you have to know. Yes, you made a point there that people are connected to a particular ideology or religion or way of life based on, that's their upbringing. They were born into it and they question it unequivocally. They just wholeheartedly, they're in that and they agree. And if you ask them why, they don't know. Because they didn't make the choice themselves.
No, that's right. It's inherited spirituality in that particular instance, right? But it's like that with almost everything in life. And people have certain views, and who do you blame for these things? Oh, the foreigners. Right. Let's blame all the foreigners.
I've always had the viewpoint that religion should be banned from children under the age of 21. And at 21, hear me out. So at 21, they can make an informed decision. They can be presented with all the leaflets and brochures that can be supplied to them, and they can make an informed decision about which one. And you can't be crucified, mind the pun, on which one you've chosen, because at that point you're able to make a choice. Being indoctrinated into something without a choice, I think, is the hardest thing to try and relieve yourself of. Because you have no basis of attraction, you don't know why you're there. It's like, voting for a particular party. You don't know why your parents do it. They've got their reasons, and you might do it until you make your own reasons to change.
But Dave, you got to get them when they're young, and everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So Hitler.
How can you instill the guilt into them, Mackie?
Well, not just guilt, but anything.
That's Catholicism. Folks.
Yeah, I know, right? Why is shit happening to me? Because you deserve it.
That's right. No, you were just born.
Yeah.
You're already guilty.
Yes, bang. And I love this original sin concept.
That's right.
But it is like that with everything. You have to get children at a very young age to indoctrinate them with anything. It doesn't have to be religion, it could be politics. It doesn't matter. You have to get them young. If you don't get them young, it's no good at all. Plus, you can't give them a good education either, or a wide-ranging, broad education. So you give them a really simple, like battery chicken education. That's where you want to be, because otherwise there are too many questions. People ask too many questions. Yeah? And look, the music is going to come on in a moment, guys. So I just want to quickly take this moment to remind everybody that Revolution.radio is in fact listener funded, which means that you vote on how successful we are, because you can donate. In fact, that's how the station runs. It runs completely on your donations. None of the hosts, that's Dave and I, or Solaris for the matter, get paid. We do this pro bono, gratis, for nothing, free, because we love doing it. It's fun. But please, so if you have a moment, please donate. Subscribe to the archive. $5 a month gets you. I mean, that's better than donating, in my opinion, for yourself, because you get something, right? So do that. There's the music. Don't go away. We're gonna come back with Nazi occultism after the break.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You're back with David Mackey's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com or revolution.radio. Whichever way you'd like to type it in, it'll still resolve to the same place. On the number one listener-supported talk radio on the net, so push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5 a month. I'd like to say hello to all of the new listeners that we have today. We're glad you're on board. Anyone who's liked, followed, or I forget what the other one is. Us, thank you for doing so. If you're listening to this on
not hate.
YouTube.
Not hate. The other one is not hate.
Not hate, yes. And we do get some haters, let me tell you. Especially those who believe the flat earth is flat. Good luck with that. Anyway, we're glad you're on board. We're halfway through show number 311, and today's
11
topic,
and 300.
11. 1, 10, and 300, is it? Or is it just...
No, 11. I think 11, yeah.
Okay.
Sounds better.
It does. It has a nice roll off the tongue. Today's topic, show arc for the next number of shows, is occultism in Nazism. Wow. It seems only just like yesterday, Mekki, we were doing a show arc on this, but it's still... Well,
it was about 13 or so shows ago when a good friend of the show, also Paul and Evil Stu, released their movie.
Absolutely.
Hitler Lives. I urge you to have a look. It's actually on all platforms now.
Yeah.
So Paul and Evil Stu or Stuart, well done, congratulations. I hope it's his avatar. I hope you guys are having success with it, and I hope people are enjoying it. It is a challenging movie, very interesting. And if you're looking for something that's completely out there, that's the one you want. Okay, it is something else entirely. Hitler Lives. The premise is straightforward. And I'm not going to give anything away, I guess, but obviously Hitler Lives gives it away. Hitler lives still. And the whole movie is really about that. And it's a very interesting psychological portrait as well. And ask yourself how you feel about the Hitler portrait in the movie once the movie finishes. How do you feel about that?
That's a good point.
Right? Yeah, because I was conflicted. I was going, man, that's horrific. You shouldn't do that. But it's Hitler, though. That's Hitler. Come on. No, it's a very interesting take on it. And I have to say that the special effects and all that are extremely well done. You have to understand that the people that did put this together did it on a shoestring, but they happen to own one of the premier special effects studios in Australia, if not the premier. And they've worked on big movies like Mad Max and such, right? The most recent version of Mad Max. So these are professionals that got together and put this movie onto celluloid or digital, whatever the case may be today. So that's why we started this show cycle, and because we started it such a long time ago now, probably 2.5, 3 months, we felt that it was important to start it yet again afresh. We have expanded the show notes significantly. As I said earlier, it's now in fact 60 pages of show notes on this. These are typewritten A4 pages, and they are roughly, I can tell you exactly how many. There are 462 words on each page. Altogether, we've got 27,941 words. Don't you love Word? It just tells you all these things. So almost 30,000 words to get through, my friend. And we're going to start with the occult roots, if you will, of National Socialism and the entire movement that was spawned in Germany at the time. Not just Germany, there was similar things were underway in Austria and Russia, England, Italy, certainly, the late 19th century. And then we go into a topic which is completely in the tinfoil hat zone. And you'll come to it. But what we believe is that the expeditions that were sparked by this interest in the occult, the expeditions the Nazis undertook into South America, into certainly Central Asia, the Middle East, actually yielded results. And we'll get to that as we go forward. But we do believe that they yielded results, and they used it. And I'm just going to say here a couple of words only. It's Kammerstab. I'm going to say the bell, right? Kecksburg, and so forth. But essentially, something went on. Something happened, and some of it, as you will find out toward the later shows, to this day we can't explain why some of these things have happened. It makes no sense. Why was such a huge amount of resources invested in doing certain things when literally the Allies were standing at the door knocking, right? So anyway, so let's get cracking, because we do need the background. We need to understand what happened, and it's occultism in Nazism. Nazism and occultism describes a range of theories, speculation, and research into the origins of Nazism and its possible relation to various occult traditions. Such ideas have been part of popular culture since at least the 1940s and gained renewed popularity starting in the 1960s. There are documentaries and books on the topic. Among the most significant are The Morning of the Magicians, written in 1960, and The Spear of Destiny, The Spear of Longinus, written in 1972. Nazism and occultism has also been featured in many, many films, novels, comic books, other fictional media. And you probably all remember Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is, and in fact, the Nazis did look for the Ark of the Covenant. They didn't just look for that; they looked for other stuff as well. So yes, it is a movie, but not that far-fetched. Historian Nicholas Goodrick Clark analyzed the topic in The Occult Roots of Nazism, a book I highly recommend you read, in which he argued there were in fact links between some ideals of Ariosophy and Nazi ideology. He also analyzed the problems of numerous popular occult historiography, books written on the topic. He sought to separate empiricism and sociology from the modern mythology of Nazi occultism that exists in many books, which have represented the Nazi phenomenon as the product of arcane and demonic influence. He considered most of these to be sensational and under-researched. Dave?
Yeah. Goodrick Clark, the Volkisch movement and Ariosophy. Historian Nicholas Goodrick Clark, 1985 book, The Occult Roots of Nazism, discussed the possibilities of links between the ideas of the occult and those of Nazism. The book's main subject was the racist occult movement Ariosophy, a major strand of nationalist esotericism in Germany and Austria during the 1800s and early 1900s. He described his work as an underground history concerned with the myths, symbols, and fantasies that bear or development of reactionary, authoritarian, and Nazi styles of thinking. He focused on his unexamined topic of history because fantasies can achieve a casual status once they have been institutionalized in beliefs, values, and social groups. He describes the Volkisch movement as a sort of anti-modernist, anti-liberal reaction to the many political, social, and economic changes occurring in Germanic Europe in the late 1800s. Part of his argument is that the rapid industrialization and rise of cities changed the traditional rural social order and ran into conflict with the pre-capitalist attitudes and institutions of the era. He described the racially elitist pan-Germanism movement of ethnic German Austrians as a reaction to Austria not being included in the German Empire of Bismarck. Mecki. You still with me? Earth to Mecki? All right.
It would help if I unmute.
Oh, yes. Well, it was awesome.
Goodrick Clark opined that the Ariosophist movement took Völkisch ideas but added occultish themes about things like Freemasonry, Kabbalism, and Rosicrucianism in order to prove the modern world was based on false and evil principles. The Ariosophist ideas and symbols filtered through to several anti-Semitic and nationalist groups in late Wilhelminian Germany, which is, we're talking about the late 19th century now, and early 20th century, from which the early Nazi party emerged in Munich after the First World War. He showed some links between two Ariosophists and Heinrich Himmler. Which brings us to the Thule Society. The Thule Society, or Thule-Gesellschaft in German, originally the study group for Germanic antiquity, in German the Studiengruppe für Germanisches Altertum, was a German occultist and Völkisch group, Völkisch meaning populist. So it's not popular, but based, on the peoples. So populist. Founded in Munich right after World War I, named after a mythical northern country in Greek legend, Thule. The society is notable chiefly as the organization that sponsored the Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, DAP, which was later organized, which is the German Workers' Party, which was later reorganized by Adolf Hitler into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or NSDAP, or in fact what we now know as the Nazi Party. According to Hitler biographer Ian Kershaw, the organization's membership list reads like a who's who of early Nazi sympathizers and leading figures in Munich, including Rudolf Hess, Alfred Rosenberg, Hans Frank, Julius Lehmann, Gottfried Feder, Dietrich Eckart und Karl Harrer. Und. Yeah. However, Nicholas Goodrich Clark contends that Hans Frank and Rudolf Hess had been Thule members, but other leading Nazis had only been invited to speak at Thule meetings, or they were entirely unconnected with it. According to Johannes Hering, there's no evidence that Hitler ever attended the Thule Society. Now, before I go on here, Dave, and you can take the origins, if a whole bunch of people that are either prominent Nazis or Nazi sympathizers are part of the Thule Society and others have been invited to speak there, then I'll say, well, there's a connection. Yeah, I know I'm out on a limb here, but that's where I'm standing. Dave, origins.
The Thule Society was originally a German study group headed by Walter Neuhaus, a wounded World War I veteran turned art student from Berlin who had become a keeper of pedigrees for the German Orden. Is that right? German Orden. An order of Teutons, a secret society founded in 1911 and formally named in the following year. In 1917, Neuhaus moved to Munich. His Thule Society was to be a cover name for the Munich branch of the Germanen Orden. But events developed differently as a result of schism. What's that word? Schism? In the order in 1918, Neuhaus was contacted in Munich by Rudolf von Sebottendorf.
Very good.
Or von Sebottendorf, an occultist and newly elected head of Bavarian province of the schismatic offshoot known as the Germanen Orden Wohlwärter of the Holy Grail.
Well done.
Yes, I'm getting it. The two men became associates in a recruitment campaign of the Sebottendorf, adopted Neuhaus's Thule Society as a cover name for his Munich lodge of the Germanen Orden Wohlwärter at its formal dedication on 18th of August 1918.
The beliefs. A primary focus of the Thule Society was a claim concerning the origins of the Aryan race. Interesting topic, which we should do, in fact. In 1917, people who wanted to join the Germanic Order, out of which the Thule Society developed in 1918, had to sign a special blood declaration of faith concerning their lineage. And this is the special declaration I'm going to read out to you here. The signer hereby swears to the best of his knowledge and belief that no Jewish or colored blood flows in either his or in his wife's veins, and that among their ancestors are no members of the colored races. Now I'm coming back. Thule was a land located by Greco-Roman geographers in the farthest north, often displayed as Iceland. The Latin term Ultima Thule, which in English means the most distant Thule, is also mentioned by Roman poet Virgil in his pastoral poems called the Georgics. Thule originally was probably the name for Scandinavia, although Virgil simply uses it as a proverbial expression for the edge of the known world, and his mention should not be taken as a substantial reference to Scandinavia. The Thule Society identified Ultima Thule as a lost ancient landmass in the extreme north, near Greenland or Iceland, said by Nazi mystics to be the capital of ancient Hyperborea. These ideas were derived from earlier speculation by Ignatius L. Donnelly that a lost landmass had once existed in the Atlantic, and it was the home of the Aryan race, a theory which he supported by reference to the distribution of swastika motifs. Now, quick pause. Donnelly was really referring to Atlantis, but it is true that the swastika motif, not the Nazi swastika, but the actual swastika, is actually quite widespread around the world. Thule was considered to be the capital city of Hyperborea, the land beyond the poles, the original land of the Aryan race, as it was in the pre-misty dawns of history, before that 100,000 year cutoff mark that Ramtha mentioned in his writings 100,000 years, so it's a long time ago. In its purest form, Hyperborea represented the archetypal powers of the universe. It is the locale where the ancient Ida race is first said to have interacted genetically with the indigenous race of Earth and created the amalgamated human we know today. Interesting mythology. From such pre-dawn civilizations that did, however, become the indigenous race on Earth that the Anunnaki decided to tinker with. He identified this with Plato's Atlantis, a theory further developed by Helena Blavatsky, an occultist during the second part of the 19th century. Dave?
Anunnaki?
I know, right?
I know. So the Ida race were the ones, that's what they called them, and associated that together once obviously everyone had found out about Sumer existing and their Anunnaki tales of the tinkering with our DNA. Extraordinary. That's the depth at which they did their research. Good on them.
Yeah, true enough.
But of course it's all about connecting their roots, Mickey.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. That's exactly right.
And yeah, that's right. But we'll find out more about that. The Tula Society attracted about 250 followers in Munich and about 1,500 elsewhere in Bavaria. The followers of the Tula Society were very interested in racial theory and, in particular, in combating Jews and communists. Sebottendorf planned but failed to kidnap Bavarian Socialist Prime Minister Kurt Einser in December of 1918. That's the same year they were founded.
They're active. You gotta give them that.
That's being active. Okay, I'm not active then. During the Bavarian Revolution of 1919, that's the next year, Tulists were accused of trying to infiltrate its government and of attempting a coup. On 26th of April, the communist government in Munich raided the society's premises and took 7 of its members into custody, executing them on the 30th of April. They only had 4 days to state their claim. No, we're just going to kill you anyway. Amongst them were Walter Neuhaus and 4 well-known aristocrats, including Countess Heile von Westarp, who functioned as the group's secretary, and Prince Gustav of Thurn and Taxis, who was related to several European royal families. In response, the Tula organized a citizens' uprising as white troops entered the city on 1st of May.
See, a lot of people don't realize just how tumultuous the time after World War I was. My grandmother told me stories, because she was a young girl then, of running battles in Berlin between the Schupo, which was the Schutzpolizei, or the protection police, and soldiers or communists or anyone for that matter, or nationalists, right? So there were pitched battles, because you have to understand, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of veterans came back to Germany, a Germany which had been completely depressed economically through the sanctions, imposed in Versailles. They had to pay 1 billion German Reichsmark in gold to the winners. Wow. And it was a mess. Germany was a mess. The Weimar Republic, all of it, it was a complete mess. And it was a very fertile ground for these kinds of people to gather followers, because Germany was rock bottom. So you have to understand the context of this, right? There's no way Hitler would have gotten any headway, or the Nazi Party for that matter, or the communists, if conditions had been favorable in Germany, if people had a future, And this is why you always have to be careful, and this is why it's important today as well. If you want to negotiate a peace, if you want to make sure that terrorism doesn't happen, right, you have to give people a future. As it was then, so it is today. People without a future, people that don't have hope, will do anything because they've got nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. It's directly from history. We all know what happened next. We all know what happened next. This is 1919, right? And if 20 years after this, right? It only took 20 years for World War II to come about, yet again, okay, and devastate the planet. But it was born here. In the devastation and the complete hopelessness that was Germany at the time, right? So anyway, that's just to give you guys a bit of perspective. We're not just talking about history; we're talking about lessons. Hopefully, we can take from this.
But it was only 2 days difference. Like they captured the people, 4 days later executed, and then they sent the troops in.
Yeah, that's it. Again, because it was such a precarious time. I mean, you just had to act. You had to be ruthless, right? You couldn't allow for any opposition to exist. Okay, it's true. Münchner Beobachter, which is a newspaper, it means the Munich Observer. In 1918, the Thule Society bought a local weekly newspaper, which is the Munich Observer, and changed its name to Munich Observer and Sports Paper in an attempt to improve its circulation. The Münchner Beobachter later became the Völkischer Beobachter, which means the people's or the populists' observer, the main Nazi newspaper. And it was edited by our friend Karl Harrer. Which brings us, my friend, to the Deutsche Arbeiterpartei.
Anton Drexler had developed links between the Thule Society and various extreme right workers' organizations in Munich. He established the Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, the DAP, the German Workers' Party as we might know it, or DAP, on the 5th of January 1919. Together with the Thule Society's Karl Harrer, which we just heard mentioned, and he's the editor of the paper, Adolf Hitler joined this party in September of the same year. By the end of February, so 1920, so just a year and a month later, the DAP had been reconstituted as the Nationalist German Socialists Workers' Party, or the NSDAP, often referred to as the Nazi Party, as we heard earlier. Bettendorf, by then, had left the Thule Society and never joined the DAP or the Nazi Party, for that matter. Dietrich Bronder, Bevor Hitler kam, 1964, alleged that other members of the Thule Society were later prominent in Nazi Germany. This list includes Dietrich Eckart, who coached Hitler on his public speaking skills, along with Erich Jan Hanussen, and had Mein Kampf dedicated to him, as well as Gottfried Feder, Hans Frank, Hermann Göring, Karl Haushofer, Rudolf Hess, Heinrich Himmler, and Alfred Rosenberg. Historians, I hope I got those right, historian Nicholas Goodrich Clark had described this membership role as and similar claims as spurious and fanciful. Nothing that Feder, Eckart, and Rosenberg were never more than guests to whom the Thule Society extended hospitality during the Bavarian Revolution of 1918. Although he has more recently acknowledged that Hess and Frank were members of the society before they came to prominence in the Nazi Party. It has also been claimed that Adolf Hitler himself was a member. Evidence, on the contrary, shows that he never attended a meeting, as attested to by Johannes Hering, Diary of Society Meetings. It is quite clear that Hitler himself had little interest in and made little time for esoteric matters. And if you want more on that, you can see also Hitler's Nuremberg speech of the 6th of September 1938 on his disapproval of occultism. Ironically, Wilhelm Laforce and Max Sesselmann, staff on the Münchner Beobachter, were Thule members who joined, or who later joined, the Nazi Party or the NSDAP. Mekki.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Dave. And look, that's fine. So Adolf Hitler himself doesn't have to be a believer in the occult. Everybody around him was. Okay, Hermann Göring, Rudolf Hess, Heinrich Himmler, Alfred Rosenberg were massively prominent, Nazis, but certainly massively powerful in Nazi Germany, right?
But that's a who's who, Mekki.
It is exactly that. You're right. It is exactly that, and you have to understand. Yet, okay, Hitler was the figurehead, and later on he might have gone a bit nutty, but if everybody around you has got a certain agenda and a certain belief system, and certainly Himmler, Himmler was probably the most interesting of the lot there. And Goering was no different. Actually, Goering was probably a lot more hedonistic. But the point here is that a lot of these guys around Hitler, and I mean guys, men in this particular instance, were complete believers in the occult and had been immersed in that, I guess, occult or esoteric world for a long time prior to even meeting Hitler. Yeah, I mean, Hitler was just the front man, and they built around their mystical Aryan nation around his ability to capture the masses. I mean, you look at him speak today, you think, oh, that's pretty I don't know, average. But to tell you what, back then, he tens of thousands were just hanging on his lips, every word he said. Now, anyway, of course, the society was dissolved in early 1920 when Karl Harrer was forced out of the DAP as Hitler moved to sever the party's link with the Toulouse Society, and then which subsequently fell into decline and was dissolved about 5 years later, 1925, which was well before Hitler came to power. So Hitler moved to sever the links. Now you can sever the links with the society. It doesn't mean that the people that were part of society don't still have the same belief system. Rudolf von Bottendorf had withdrawn from the Toulouse Society in 1919, but he returned to Germany in 1933 in the hope of reviving it. In that year, he published a book entitled Before Hitler Kam, which means Before Hitler Came, in which he claimed that the Toulouse Society had paved the way for the Führer. Toolers, members of the Toulouse Society, were the ones to whom Hitler first came, and Toolers were the first to unite themselves with Hitler. I can't argue with that. Now, of course, the claim was not favorably received by the Nazi authorities. After 1933, esoteric organizations were suppressed, including völkisch or populist occultists. Many closed down by anti-Masonic legislation in 1935. Bottendorf's book was prohibited, and he himself was arrested and imprisoned for a short period in 1934, afterwards, of course, departing into exile in Turkey. Nonetheless, it has been argued that some Thule members and their ideas were incorporated into the Third Reich. Some of the Thule Society's teachings were expressed in the books of Alfred Rosenberg. Many occult ideas found favor with Heinrich Himmler, who had a great interest in mysticism, unlike Hitler. But the Schutzstaffel, which is the SS, under Himmler emulated the structure of Ignatius Loyola's Jesuit order rather than the Toulouse Society, at least according to Horne. Now, the Jesuit order is probably another topic we need to address here, but it is important to understand that the occultist ideas of the late 19th century and early 20th century were fundamental in shaping Nazi ideology and then later the policies and activities of the Third Reich as we know them. Okay, now let's talk about the esotericism in Germany and Austria, the influences from before 1880, because that's when it sort of kicked into high gear. But what happened before that? Now let's go right back. The Knights Templar and occultism. The original Knights Templar, founded around 1119, so we're talking like 800-900 years ago, had been a crusading military order that at some time had established financial networks across the whole of Christendom. In 1307, King Philip IV of France mounted a slanderous campaign to strip the order of its economic and political influence. The Templars were accused of satanic practices, perversions, and blasphemy, and ruthlessly suppressed. They were, that is. Its leaders were burned on March 18, 1314. The circumstances of the suppression gave rise to legends surrounding the Knights Templar, of course. In Germany, where the growth of deviant Masonic rites was greatest, the Templar heritage was adopted for irregular Freemasonry. Freemasonry had been officially founded in England in 1717. The idea of chivalric Freemasonry first occurred circa 1737 in France. In 1775, Baron Gotthelf von Hund, who lived from 1722 to 76, founded the Order of Strict Observance, claiming the possession of secret Templar documents which allegedly proved that his order represented the legal Templar succession. Now, we've spent a lot of time on the Knights Templar, on the Cathars as well. I won't go into detail here, but it's important to understand that they were a powerful force for the 200 years, the odd 200 years that they had in Europe. In fact, they were the most powerful force in Europe at the time. Dave, Rosicrucianism.
Rosicrucianism, yes, absolutely. I just want to make a reference here that if you do some research yourself, everyone, and find out the origin of the term before time, and I think you'll find that it had its origin to before the year 1119. Sorry, 1119. It's an extraordinary coincidence.
Is that right?
Yeah. It refers to a time before them.
Wow.
So have a look anyway. In the 17th century and 18th century, Rosicrucian ideas flourished in various degrees, in varying degrees. I'm going to put my teeth back in. Rosicrucianism goes back to the beginning of the 17th century, where 3 works by Johann Valentin Andrei were printed in Kassel. One of these works, the Chimsche Hochzeit, appears to be an alchemical tract, while the other 2, and I'm probably not saying that right either, for which the authorship of Valentin Andrei is not finally proven, announce the existence of the Rosicrucian order, which desires an universal and general reformation of the whole world, unquote. Putatively, this order was founded by Christian Rosicrucians, who is supposed to have lived from 1378 to 1484. In either 1747 or 1757, a quasi-Masonic Rosicrucian order of the name Gold und Rosicrucians was founded in Berlin, having a 9-grade hierarchy based on the Kabbalist Tree of Life. This organization included King Frederick William II of Prussia and Johann Christoph von Wohler as members. Mecki, tell us more about the German occult revival of 1880 to 1910.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's important to understand that before this time, and it's really the 1860s and 1870s we're talking about here, there was no Germany. Okay, Germany was made up of a whole bunch of different principalities and countries. And in fact, the actual country was called the Holy Roman Empire of German Nations. The Holy Roman Empire of German Nations, plural. And what Germany was trying very, very hard to do, actively, in a similar fashion to Japan, was create a mythology of origin, and a mythology that would bind all Germans together. The only true nations at the time were France and Great Britain. Oh, sorry, England, I should say. France and England, really, who had gone through this nation development naturally. Germany was late to the party, and other countries like Spain, Italy, are still struggling today with a national identity. Right? So as you can see, it wasn't an easy thing. So that's the background to this. They had to somehow forge a nation. The modern German occult revival owes its inception to the popularity of theosophy in the Anglo-Saxon world during the 1880s. Because you have to also understand that as England expanded into the East, a lot of the philosophies and so forth in the 18th and 19th century came to Europe. Not just the spices that came, but also ideas and people. The first German Theosophical Society was established in July 1884 under the presidency of Wilhelm Hübbe-Schleiden, a conservative German nationalist and turned spiritual seeker who sought to establish theosophy on a scientific basis. It's a very German thing to do, by the way. Between 1886 and 1895, Hübbe-Schleiden published the monthly periodical Die Sphinx, which just means Sphinx, in Vienna. A Theosophical Society was founded in 1887. Its president was Friedrich Eckstein. Among his circle at the time were Franz Hartmann, a leader of theosophical work who emphasized personal spiritual experience, and the young Rudolf Steiner. And if you know anything, in fact, the Steiner schools are his brainchild. A German Theosophical Society as a branch of the International Theosophical Brotherhood then was established in 1896 when the American Theosophists around William Quan Judge, Catherine Tingley, E.T. Hargrove, and C.F. Wright traveled through Europe. Its president was Franz Hartmann, who also founded a theosophical lay monastery at Ascona in 1889. His periodical Lotusblüten, Lotus Blossoms, was the first German publication to use the theosophical swastika on its cover. Okay, that's where the origin, at least in Germany, of the swastika comes from. Hartmann's example provided the impetus for Paul Zillmann to found the Metaphysische Rundschau, which is the Metaphysical Review, in 1896. Rudolf Steiner was made General Secretary of the German Theosophical Society in 1902. Steiner, who was seeking to develop an esoteric path suitable for the modern era and professed commitment to scientific methodology, was yet oriented towards awakening spiritual experiences in each individual rather than depending upon authorities or gurus. He published Lucifer at Berlin from 1903 to 1908. This is getting very interesting. Listen up. In Vienna, there also existed an association for occultism, connected to a person called Philip Maslowski. From 1903, he published a periodical called Die Gnosis, or the Gnosis, that was later absorbed by Rudolf Steiner's periodical Lucifer and renamed Lucifer Gnosis. Yeah, Gnosis really meaning knowledge, and anyway, we know all know who Lucifer is. It may have been a desire to counter Steiner's influence in the occult subculture, which led Hartmann to encourage the publication of several new periodicals. A theosophical publishing house was established by Hugo Wollrath in Leipzig in 1906. Among the magazines published, there was Prana, 1909 to 1919, so we see the Indian or Hindu influences coming through here as well. Initially edited by Karl Brennler-Pracht and later edited by Johannes Balzli. Before that, a publisher with the name Wilhelm Friedrich had already published the works of Hartmann and Hübbe Schleiden, as well as translations of the English Theosophists at Leipzig. Wilhelm Friedrich had also published the occult works of Max Ferdinand Sebald von Werth. Initially, this author had collaborated with Moritz von Egedy on the periodical Das angewandte Christentum, which means applied Christianity. But later, he wrote volumes on the sexual religion of the Aryans, thus, in the opinion of Goodrick Clark, anticipating Ariosophy. That's a tongue twister. Dave? Anthroposophy. From 1907 at the latest, tensions between Rudolf Steiner and the Theosophical Society grew steadily. In 1912, Rudolf Steiner broke away to found Anthroposophy. There were two causes of the break. Steiner's European and Christian orientation had long been distinct from the Hinduistic interest of the Theosophists under the leadership of Annie Besant. More immediately, Steiner publicly distanced himself from Besant's promotion of Yiddu Krishnamurti as a supposed new messiah. Krishnamurti, you must have heard of him. Steiner and a group of prominent German Theosophists officially founded the Anthroposophical Society in December 1913. The vast majority of the German membership of the Theosophical Society following them into the new group. The breakaways were excluded from the Theosophical Society in January 1914. Dave?
Yes, Guido von List and Jörg Lanz von Liebenfels.
Very good.
And do you know, Becky, I was actually speaking, but I was muted.
No,
I did your trick. And then I heard you talking over and and then I checked I was muted. So, living in Vienna, Guido von List, 1848 to 1919. Wow, he died. Was he one of the people that was killed? Had been active as a journalist and writer. After he turned to esotericism, he became the first popular author to combine Voltschik's ideology and occultism into the type of esoteric doctrine that is now collectively labelled Ariosophy. In September 1903, the occult periodical Die Gnosis, you can see, just here from earlier, included an article by List in which he, referring Sebald von Vers started to articulate a Germanic occult religion. In the following decade, Liszt continued to work on this topic, also making references to the works of Madame Blavatsky and William Scott Elliot. I should just say William Scott Elliot. In his concept of Armanism, the religion of the theocratic elite in his image of the ancient Germanic past, Liszt borrowed material from Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism. Since his manuscript proposing the research into runes by the means of occult insight was rejected from the Imperial Academy of Sciences in Vienna, the supporters of Liszt formed a Liszt Society, Guido von Liszt Gesellschaft, to finance his research. The society was founded officially on the 2nd of March 1908. Its members included Volsci's authors as well as occultists, for example, Franz Hartmann, and the complete membership of the Vienna Theosophical Society. Some inner members of the Liszt Society participated in activities of the Hohe Armanen Orden, or the High Armanen Order. This order, however, achieved no significance as a lodge-like organization. Mecki.
Jörg Lanz von Liebenfels had been a Cistercian monk between 1893 and 1899. In 1903, he published a long article, Anthropozoon Biblicum, in the Vierteljahresschrift für Bibelkunde, which is a periodical for Bible research. By 1905, his studies in this direction had accumulated into the book Theozoology, a strange amalgam of traditional Judeo-Christian sources and contemporary life sciences. So I didn't stutter there, I did say theozoology. Things you learn. Among other things, Lanz proposed a frequently obscene and always radical interpretation of the Bible, according to which it had been the purpose of the Old Testament to warn the Aryan race against inbreeding with pygmies. In 1905, Lanz also established his own magazine, Ostara. One of the few other contributors to this magazine beside Lanz himself was the theosophist Harald Grevel von Jostenode, who also edited one number of Lotusblüten. You remember the Lotus Blossom magazine we mentioned earlier? Now, before I go into other developments, it is very important for everybody to understand what the world was like in the late 19th century. So, 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, and right into the early 20th century. People were extremely racist. Okay, you have to understand, otherwise none of this makes any sense. There was a very strong movement, in fact maybe some kind of retro justification of why Europe should colonize the rest of the world. Because the Chinese hadn't gone and colonized, the Africans hadn't gone and colonized, and the South Americans and North Americans hadn't gone and colonized Europe. That didn't happen, right? What had happened was that, the Spanish, the English certainly, to some lesser extent the Belgians and the French and the Italians, and then at the end of that the Germans, went out to colonize the rest of the world. But by what right do they do that? Well, because they're better, right? That's why they did it, because they're better. They're doing it for the benefit of the other poor natives all around the world. It's a complete humbug, of course, but you had to justify it somewhere. You couldn't just go on killing people and cultures and, just because you wanted to. It had to be for God. It had to be for culture. It had to be because, we're helping them. We're helping them. That's what we're doing here. We're civilizing them. We're colonizing them. So that was actually in full swing. And Germany had come late to the party and was grabbing a few countries in Africa here and there, a few islands in the Pacific. But it was a thing. So there was this deep need for the justification. So you had this deep need for nation building, right? You had a deep need that, was required to justify, I guess, colonization to some extent as well. And out of all of that was this new influx of ideas from the East, the influx of which we hadn't seen since the Renaissance, since the fall of Constantinople, which in fact triggered the Renaissance. But all of a sudden, all these new ideas came in. This was on the back of Napoleon going into Egypt. as well, and rediscovering, I guess, to some extent, the pyramids. A renewed interest, in Hindu religion as well, as the British Empire was expanding its influences. So there's a whole bunch of different things coming together, and it doesn't make any sense, right? Unless, what happened, that is, unless you understand the background here, which was extremely complex. Now, there were other developments as well, which are very important. The German and Vienna occult subculture was well developed before the First World War. Aside from the developments mentioned, earlier, there's some more of interest that we're going to share with you here. The Ordo Templi Orientis, the OTO, originated in the irregular Masonic activities of Theodor Reuss, Franz Hartmann, and Karl Kellner between 1895 and 1906. Theodor Reuss had been in contact with William Westcott, a founding member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. That should be familiar, guys. In 1928, Fraternitas Saturni split off from the OTO. Ernst Wachler was a Völkisch author. He supported the Guido von List Society, who had been an open-air Germanic, who founded an open-air Germanic theater in the Harz Mountains in Germany. This theater, called Green Stage, was closed in 1937. The Germanische Glaubensgemeinschaft, which means the Germanic Faith Society, founded in 1907, is claimed by current Germanic neo-paganism groups as a predecessor. It was founded and led by the painter Ludwig Fahrenkrog. Since 1908, the group used the swastika as its symbol, right, predating the Nazi use. After 1938, the use of the swastika became prohibited, and the group was no longer allowed to hold public meetings, because the swastika was now the emblem of the Nazi Party. However, unlike many other esoteric groups in Nazi Germany, the GGG was not forced to disband, partly because of Fahrenkrog's international status as an artist. Interbellum, Dave, interbellum means the time between the wars. Interbellum. Inter arma, was it between wars the weapons are in times of war the reason is silent or something. Anyway, I'll come up with it.
Yeah, okay, that's good. I like that one. It's also a time of the slowdown of development of weapons in between wars.
That's right.
Ariosophy, Ordo Novi Templi, and the Lumen Club. Lanz had coined the term Ariosophy, meaning occult wisdom concerning the Aryans, in 1915. In the 1920s, he then used this label for his doctrine. Both List and Lanz greeted World War I as a millenarium struggle. Guido von List wrote his research reports on the Aryo-Germanics, between 1908 and 1913, but in 1917, two later articles written by him appeared in Prana. He died in 1919 in Berlin. The List Society was continued after his death, but not much is known of its activities. By contrast, the organization, founded around 1907 by Lanz von Liebenfels, achieved more significance. The New Templar Lodge, called Ordo Novi Templi, or ONT. On 11th of November 1932, influenced by Ariosophy, the industrialist with the name Johann Walthari Wolfe also founded an association called Lumen Club in Vienna, which overlapped in membership with the ONT. The ideological sympathy for the Lumen Club to Nazism is beyond question, as it acted as a growth centre for the Nazi Party that was illegal in Austria since 1934. Nevertheless, they were later suppressed like other esoteric groups after the Anschluss.
Very good.
1938, Lanz von Liebenfels had his writings banned. The Lumen Club and the ONT were suppressed, and the Gestapo in March 1942, following the party edict in December 1938 that applied to many sectarian groups. Werner von Bülow, and Herbert Reichstein had applauded the advent of the Third Reich in their esoteric magazines. So could you hear that, Mekki? That they supported the Third Reich, but they were shut down.
Well, this is, look, and you're right. I mean, you think, well, what happened there? Well, the answer is that a lot of the people that came to prominence in Nazi Germany were, in fact, occultists. They had very strong links with, quite a number of these societies and movements. But what you also have to understand, that these were quite intellectually highly powered groups and people. So you could not let them run free. The first thing that happened after the French Revolution, right, was that all the people that could start another revolution were killed. They were all executed. Okay, Robespierre killed all of his co-conspirators.
Of course.
But the same thing happened again in the Night of the Long Knives, in Nazi Germany. And in fact, you look at what happened when Lenin died in Russia. Trotsky had to flee to Mexico, where Stalin had him assassinated. So all the people that can pose a threat, especially when it comes to these things, you have to understand that the Nazis, and I'm not talking about Hitler now, I'm talking about the Nazis, right, and the Goerings and the Himmlers, especially of the world, the Rosenbergs. They wanted to establish their own occult practices, and they couldn't allow any competition in that space either, because again, this was a real thing. People were really believing in a lot of these things, and I'm not saying they're not real, but what I'm saying to you is they believed in them then very, very much so, and they were in a position of power at the time, right? So it's important to understand that. So they shut them down because there were competition. They shut down, not all of them, but most of them, and they shut down a whole bunch of other things like the Communist Party, like Freemasons. They shut all of these down because these are organizations that could work against. So these are people that are already organized, right? So you've got clubs that are already organized, and you're starting to establish a dictatorship. The last thing you want is people that are armed. So boom, what happens? A weapons registry and confiscation of weapons. So very strict gun laws came in. Second thing is you don't need people that are already organized in a political or spiritual way. You don't need that. That's something that is just not good for you. Okay, so you get rid of that too. Because that leaves people defenseless and vulnerable and more likely to follow you. So
Mekki, at the end of World War One, there was a boom. I shouldn't say boon. There was a boon with an N, a boon of societies and groups with ideas that didn't fit the norm.
Yes.
And this was, more than ultra prominent. This was a thing everyone was doing.
Yes.
Everyone's ideas seemed like the thing I should be connecting myself with.
Yes, correct. That's exactly right.
But not only that, but it was the Nazi Party that had decided or saw all of those people as threats.
Yes, I mean, as any dictatorial, government would. The people that can offer you the most resistance are the people that you have to get rid of first. The Nazi Party didn't come after the Jews. That's a common misconception. They came after the communists first, the socialists. Yeah, those were in fact, the very first people they went after was their own people in the Night of the Long Knives. All right, there was something called the SA, the Sturmabteilung. They were called the Brown Shirts, and they were eventually displaced by the SS. But in a night, which is remembered as the Night of the Long Knives, the Nacht der langen Messer, the entire leadership of the SA was killed.
Wow.
Perfect.
Yes, there it is. And we'll see you for show 312. Stay tuned for a roundtable with Jer Bear. And be part of this. You can. I know you can. See you next week.